Trump is only a CO star in America's Unreality show. His voters see no reason to disown a dishonorable champion against dishonorable opponents. Decide how you want to intervene to influence a presidential election. Identify some top-secret intelligence dredged from the compendious internet to justify your desired action, confident the justification can't be examined or easily criticized by outsiders. This is exactly what happened in the FBI's handling of the Hillary Clinton email case, though the press is loath to acknowledge it. It happened again in the collusion investigation. The same pattern was used in the Hunter Biden laptop episode. The pattern is surprisingly applicable even in the latest kerfuffle, the indictment of Donald Trump for improperly keeping intelligence documents. Don't expect actually to see the documents. Do expect to be inundated with official statements and press leaks characterizing Mr. Trump's possession of them as a DEFCON-level threat to national security. Every bit of recent history suggests government claims require careful flyspecking. Take the indictment's emphasis on an audio recording of Mr. Trump allegedly flaunting a military strike plan for Iran to a visiting writer at his club in Bedminster, New Jersey, rather than at Mar-a-Lago, where an FBI raid showed Mr. Trump stored his presidential papers. The government doesn't actually specify that such a document was found or that it was secret. A separate catalog in the indictment suggests a possibly relevant document was unmarked as to classification. Prosecutors may already know they can't prove Mr. Trump wasn't waving a takeout menu to rebut a former military advisor then criticizing him in the news. But the anecdote was featured in the indictment and went over well in news coverage. The larger problem here is becoming metastatic. Anybody can claim anything, then a government official can dignify the claim as intelligence and use it as the basis for action. The FBI in particular has shown itself increasingly willing to use false information to advance its goals. It started when FBI Chief James Comey used false Russian intelligence to clear Hillary Clinton's path to the 2016 nomination and spare the Obama Justice Department the political embarrassment of having to do the job itself. Of course, it's only a small step from here to fabricating the desired intelligence out of whole cloth. The telltale duo of our time is Christopher Steele, the gullible British ex-spy, and his hired helper, Igor Danchenko, who invented for Mr. Steele's benefit the secrets Mr. Steele was eager to sell to his clients in the Clinton campaign. The real world implies limitation, fantasy doesn't. Fantasy creation is becoming a major occupation of our intelligence agencies and the FBI. Falsehood, after all, can be tailored to need, whereas the incentive for truth largely dissipates if officials and the media don't feel chastened or even slightly disadvantaged when their assertions are shown to be false. For another day is the strangest manifestation, which happily some other journalists are starting to notice, the recurrent footsie between the Pentagon and the UFO crowd. The latest whistleblower, recently resigned Air Force and intelligence veteran David Grush, takes a revealingly Steele-like approach, suitable to a click-driven world that wants sensational claims rather than plausible ones. He claims to have seen documents and spoken to sources who say the Pentagon is swimming in alien artifacts, first obtained from the Mussolini government in Italy in 1944 or 1945, and has killed people to protect its secret. I keep trying to point out to Trump critics, we live not in a Manichaean political world but a world of competition and emulation. Hence the blinkered and self-serving nature of their demand that Trump supporters disown their unsavory tribune and his unsavory tactics against an equally dishonorable opposition. The left's favorite accusation of whataboutism is a manifesto of this delusion that irrationalism and conspiracy mongering are features only of Republican Party politics. The mirror doesn't lie. A related symbol is the near disappearance of the policy tome. White papers once flooded press inboxes. They've slowed to a trickle because appeals to rationality no longer carry much weight in the battle for political power. If you worry that artificial intelligence will only make the disinformation problem worse, you may not be aware of how bad it has already become. This was an interesting week for House Republicans, at least to float a short-lived censure of chief collusion hoaxer Adam Schiff. I've given a half-cheer to the voting machine company lawsuits and twice urged Joe Biden to endorse the Durham investigation for the same reason. The challenge of our time is reclaiming the rule of reason and evidence from cynical fantasists of every description. The FBI would be a good place to start. Trump is only a CO star in America's Unreality show. His voters see no reason to disown a dishonorable champion against dishonorable opponents. Decide how you want to intervene to influence a presidential election. Identify some top-secret intelligence dredged from the compendious internet to justify your desired action, confident the justification can't be examined or easily criticized by outsiders. When Queen Elizabeth left, she took the happiness with her. As another American presidential race begins, I find myself missing the Queen, who was the last of a dying breed, royal or otherwise, and a monument to what we used to call class without fear of offense. Elizabeth's departure from her mortal coil has left a void. The upside is that it distracts from hating everyone in the American presidential queue. While I don't really hate anyone, if you stay in journalism long enough, you discover one day that there's no one left to like. This will be my 12th presidential race, which sounds to me a small number, given the degree of my malaise. The similarities between our nation of migrant mutts, speaking of my own ancestors, who fought to extract themselves from monarchical control, and the descendants of that same monarchy, have amounted to approximately zero, until now. Without Elizabeth, the royals are at least as common as the rest of us, and further proof that privilege does not endow happiness. King Charles and his mirthless seedling Harry have this non-royalist fixated as never before. Throughout the latter years of the Queen's reign, I sometimes wondered why she wouldn't step down and allow her eldest son to assume the throne before he, too, grew old. Alas, Elizabeth knew what she was doing. She knew her own son well enough and wasn't letting go of that crown. How sad she must have been to realize that her embarrassing brood would inherit and sadden the kingdom. Exceptions among the younger generations are the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, and their 3 children, who seem to be cut from the same cloth as Elizabeth. If only Charles and Camilla would retire to the Waldorf Towers, as the Duke and Duchess of Windsor had the decency to do. Nothing makes me an expert on royalty, fond as I am of the royal we. I am, however, a student of human nature and recognize that the royals are a miserable lot, largely because they're so useless. People naturally want to strive. Without striving, idleness leads to trouble. Which brings us to Charles III, the most unhappy king because, at the end of the day, being king isn't a great job for him. Just a guess. As king, Charles has encountered a truth and a principle. The truth about life is that satisfaction comes from the journey, not the destination. The Peter Principle says that being good at one job doesn't mean that you'll be good at a higher one. Environmentalist was a palatable role for a polo-playing prince. He excelled at it and did valuable work. As a ribbon-cutting king, though, he's as stale as a leftover scone. To wit, Charles